The long west coast of Norway has to be one of the most spectacular coastal landscapes in the world. So I can think of few better ways to spend 7 days than sailing past its perpendicular mountains, fantastical islands and remote ports. This is the third time that I've taken the Hurtigruten Coastal Express, and I've also sailed along here on the Svalbard Express. So I am one of the many thousands of customers who are in love with this route. But surprisingly perhaps, there are many travellers who post negative reviews of their experience, which can be quite hard to understand unless you take into account one important factor. This is not a cruise. The boat behind me is not a cruise ship. It is perhaps best described as a luxury ferry. Let me explain. The Norwegian Coastal Express was the brainchild of Richard Witt, a means of linking the remote coastal settlements of the northwest coast. The full route from Bergen to Kirkenes was inaugurated in 1908 and has been operating relatively unchanged ever since, connecting a total of 34 ports. Given the stunning scenery, it's no surprise that the route has long been incredibly popular with tourists. But despite the large number of tourists, this is still a working boat. To demonstrate that fact, a limited service continued throughout the pandemic when there were no foreign tourists in sight. At almost every port there is a turnover of passengers and cargo. It's one of the great attractions of the voyage. However, the working timetable does mean that the time in most ports is very limited indeed, and the longer stops only allow for a whistle-stop tour. As this is not a cruise ship, apart from some lectures on culture and wildlife, there is no onboard entertainment. The entertainment is Norway. And if that's not enough, then there's always shopping, especially useful if you need some extra winter layers. Here is a very graphic example of the difference. The MS Nordlys has just docked at Tromsø harbour and is completely dwarfed by the enormous cruise ship next to it. When 300 or 400 people disembark, they disperse. When 3,000 to 4,000 people disembark, they just swamp the place. That's my opinion, and that's why I prefer this voyage and not that cruise ship. Hi Mum, I've brought you something from Trondheim.
Oh wow, I love these, my favourite. I've had a lovely morning. I've sat in the sun, I've read my book, and I've had a very nice coffee.
One of the frequently asked questions is what's the temperature like on board during winter? Well, I can say this, you probably wouldn't walk around in a t-shirt and shorts. However, I've just been to Trondheim, which was about -5, -6 degrees, and I wore my thermals. I'm still in my thermals and I'm now roasting.
During the day, a light jumper is enough. In the evening, I usually put my gilet on. Although in the front lounge, it does get cooler the further north you go.
Do you find your cabin warm enough?
It's very comfortable. It's warm, but you can regulate the temperature and it's very easy.
The cabins on board range from small inside cabins to suites. On this sailing, I have a polar outside cabin with a double bed rather than separate beds. There's plenty of storage space and my suitcase fits under the bed. There is no shortage of sockets of the 2-pin European style. The thermostat is simple and very effective. The television has Norwegian channels as well as tons of information, and my favourite, the bow cam. The bathroom is compact, the water is drinkable and the floor is heated, which is very welcome in winter. For this trip I chose an upper floor which is quieter during the port stops, but the negative is the very limited view. I dread to think how much champagne costs in Norway.
Oh!
Whee! Here's hoping we see the Northern Lights on this trip.
Well, let's hope so.
Okay Mum, I'll have one glass and you can have the rest of the bottle.
Oh, thank you.
Is it good?
Oh wow, it's fabulous. More.
As well as the main restaurant, food options on board include the bakery cafe and an a la carte bistro operating from 2 till 10. Now, the food. Hurtigruten are not paying me to say this. They should be, but they're not. I've always been really impressed by the standard of food on these trips. What you have in the morning is a buffet, and similarly at lunchtime But these are not ordinary buffets. There's an incredible selection. There really is no reason not to eat extremely healthy food, albeit there is the odd temptation. Now, the evening meal is a set 3-course meal, and you can find out early in the day what it is by using the app, or indeed just talking to the restaurant staff. And if you have any dietary restrictions or want something changed, then the earlier you do it, the easier it will be for them. The theme of the main restaurant is Norway's coastal kitchen, and each evening the menu takes its inspiration from the province along which we're sailing. So today it's Ålesund and the surrounding area, and there are 3 choices. The starter, we have dried and salted cod carpaccio, fried cauliflower and potato and spring onion soup. For the main course, salted leg of lamb, sterling halibut and Hasselback pumpkin. Dessert, we have brownie, vegan brownie, cheese of the day or ice cream. I knew you'd choose the brownie.
Well, it was a very easy decision.
And if you want to read the story of where the food has actually come from, the local producers, then all of that information is on the back of the menu. With all that amazing food, you'll want to stay fit. There's a well-stocked gym, a sauna, a hot tub if you can brave the temperatures. This is water that has dripped out of the hot tub. Or you could simply do laps of the boat. And if that leaves you with a pile of dirty clothes, then there is a laundry. All you need to do is get a token from reception and away you go. At each of the major stops there are a whole host of excursions to choose from. Now, I've never actually been on one of the excursions, a matter of personal choice really. I'm more of an independent traveller, but there's also the budget question. By UK standards, the excursions are very expensive. Another complaint that's sometimes levelled at the excursions is that for the price, they're too short. But what you have to take into account is that they have to fit in with the timetable. And many of these stops are very limited. The coastal expedition teams are always very knowledgeable, very friendly and enthusiastic. And I say, well, if this is the trip of a lifetime and you want to go kayaking or dog sledding, well, go for it. Now, the question of money. Norway is virtually a cashless society. Everywhere takes card, and in fact everywhere prefers that you pay with card. Cash comes as something as a surprise, and you don't need to worry about tipping here either. On board ship, everything is paid for by card, except for excursions where you'll need a cruise card available at check-in. I always take out just a tiny amount of cash because sometimes the card machines don't work. And lo and behold, here in Honningsvåg at my favourite little cafe, they had a problem with their machine. Not an issue for me though, because I had some cash. Embarkation at Bergen is very easy indeed. You can leave luggage from 1 PM and the check-in begins at 3:30 with boarding at 4 PM. At Kirkenes you can book a transfer by bus to either the Torn Hotel or to the airport. Alternatively, of course, you can stay on board and sail all the way back to Bergen. Despite the length of the voyage and the high latitude, the sailing is generally smooth as the boat takes an inside passage between the mainland and the islands. Information is provided as to when to expect the more unpredictable open sea sections. The longest stretch of open sea is directly after leaving Honningsvåg, where I am now, and that's when we head out into the Barents Sea for the remainder of day 6 and the morning of day 7. It can be a bit rough out there. Well, in the event, the Barents Sea was kind to us. And in fact, we've been very fortunate with the weather overall, because a week ago it was at least 10 degrees colder, and 2 weeks ago the coast was hit by one of the worst storms that Norway has seen for decades. I guess that's the lottery of taking the voyage in the winter. If you do come in winter, then get some yak tracks or something similar for your boots. Otherwise, you'll probably slip up. In the major towns you'll find that some of the pavements are cleared, but then the rest are just compacted ice and snow. If you haven't brought them with you, then you can get them on board or at nearly all the outdoor shops in Norway. So do you think you prefer sailing in the winter or the summer?
Good question. It's very different. Scenery, I think, is more dramatic in the winter. However, I did find mobility a little bit of a problem.
I think perhaps late spring is a really good time, because then you get the sunlight and the longer days down south, but you do still get some of the snow when you get here to the Arctic, and I think that's what makes it really special when you're this far north. I hope that this short film has answered some of the questions that you might have about the Hurtigruten Coastal Express. The full film of the voyage is coming up next.